Well, that's how we start this morning. We're looking at that attack which happened on Manga community in Taraba State by Ambazonian rebel soldiers. We have joining us to discuss this Brigadier General, retired Brigadier General Sani Osman, who's a former director of the Army Public Relations and also a former spokesperson of the Nigerian Army. You're welcome to Sunrise Elite this morning.
Thank you very much for having me on your program. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, we saw that story break sometime last week, and we heard that about 12 people lost their lives in that attack, including the traditional ruler of that particular community. And a lot of Nigerians were initially alarmed because they're still alarmed, but I think their fear was that this was carried out by Cameroonian gendarmes. But now we understand that they were Ambazonian rebel separatists who, carried out that attack on that village, very vulnerable village. I do not know, what are you, because our correspondent has been there now with security agents and the Taraba state government who went to carry out an assessment, and they've since found out that the border is porous. There was a reason why the attack happened as well, even though some people say there's no excuse. But primarily what we notice is that there is no significant government presence in that community, and so it made the community even more vulnerable to that attack. What are your thoughts, or what were your thoughts when you first of all heard about this incursion onto Nigerian territory by foreign separatists?
Well, I think it is not surprising simply because over time the separatists have been getting really active, particularly on this side of on the other side of the Nigerian border. What I mean is that Cross River and Taraba State, neighboring Cameroon. And there are kind of divergent reasons also for it, in the sense that if you look at what the Ambazonian leader was saying, Dr. Samuel Sako, he was saying that actually it was the Cameroonian Defense Forces that they have reported in September that they will disguise as Ambazonian to carry out attacks to give an excuse for a cooperation between the Cameroonian defense forces and security forces with the Nigerian forces to deal with Ambazonians that are residing or taking refuge in this country. And but then again, there are also stories that it is some of those that are staying in one of the refugee camps that staged the attack. However, there is one other reason also, and if you notice also in the clip that you've just shown by the reporter, there is a kind of relationship between the communities, and it is common among the border communities, not just only in Nigeria, in some of the African countries, that because of affinity of, or do I call it cultural and historical affinities, they tend to see the other ones as their brothers and sisters, as the case may be. So the community has been playing host to this separatists, but it turns out that a criminal is always a criminal. And the remote cause of it is that actually one of the Ambazonians was killed, and so they suspected that it was the village chief that, fingered him out for, killing. Then you remember some time ago, one of their leaders that was hiding here in Abuja was handed over to the Cameroonian government, by the Nigerian government. So there are so many, built up issues that led to this, attack on this hapless community. And you are you are right. Even though the military has established about 4 forward operation bases, 2 in Cross River State and 2 in Taraba State, a lot need to be done in terms of government presence, because that is the problem we have. I wonder what happens to the, border communities commission, because these people, they are always at the receiving end of complex situations, and sometimes they are neglected with common social facilities and infrastructures are not available, and they tend to be tempted, or to kind of be loyal to whoever that tends to take care of them. So basically, these are the combination of factors that brought about the problems that we just saw, which leads to the unfortunate killing of the chief and some other people, and the abduction of some. And unless decisive action is taken, but I know for sure the security forces, particularly the military, are taking proactive measures to make sure that this will not occur. And if it does, definitely they will trace and deal with the perpetrators of this crime. And so far, I was even made to understand that some arrests have already been made.
Well, the factors which you list, already say how complicated the issue is. What it would also mean, or what it would also point to, is the fact that a thorough investigation needs to be done. Because if the Amazonian rebels are denying the attack, knowing the implication of what it could spell, because there are already those who are saying that if rebels are coming into the country, and the Cameroonian government is not for them, and of course Nigerian government will not be happy about that, the chances are very high that we could see bilateral cooperation with Cameroon, to ensure that this sort of attacks do not happen, at least on Nigerian soil. So it will mean, especially now that the Amazonian rebels are denying that attack, that a thorough investigation, maybe a more thorough investigation, needs to be carried out to find out who precisely carried out the attack.
Well, certainly there should be, beyond what the military have done so far. But I can rest assure you that there is no denying the fact that these attacks were carried out by the separatists, the Amazonian separatists, regardless of whatever Dr. Samuel Sako will say. Because
how are you certain about that?
of course, arrests have been made, and of course they have started giving out information as to the identity of those responsible. And like I told you earlier on, the communities play host to some of these people. They know who they are, but due to cultural affinity, they tend to neglect that aspect. And one thing I want you to understand, this is not the first time such things are happening, not just with Cameroonian separatists, but even in those days when, there were rebels in Chad. In those days, Chad has never had a normal democratic governance. So you are either in government or you are in opposition. And even if you are in opposition, you are a rebel. And they had their camps along the fringes of Lake Chad basins. Those were the people that form the earliest bandits that we had. If you remember the Kwanta syndromes, way back in the northeast. So basically, these are the issues. And we tend to neglect that particular aspect as regards to border communities. And it is not just our border with Cameroon and Chad. We have that with Niger Republic. We have that with Benin Republic. That's sometimes we had instances where the activities of the village chieftains in Nigerians on the Nigerian side are being sponsored by, smugglers. Take for instance, in between the Nigerian border and Benin Republic. So therefore, their loyalty and affinity tends to be on the other side. And when criminals come, they know how to lure people. Such things do happen. So beyond the thorough investigation, there is need to also critically evaluate the activities of the Nigerian, Border Commission, and to see to what extent can we enhance the well-being of our various border communities, not just issue of physical security, as the military and security forces are doing, but in terms of, infrastructures that will enhance their well-being so that they will have greater sense of belonging, and these people will not come and, entice them with certain things.
It was saying that, the issues around border communities are a bit complicated.
Very.
Part of the complication is the fact that, there's always affinity between, look at this village now. They have a sister community that, was ceded to Cameroon as a result of a plebiscite. But their people still very much identify with their brothers in Nigeria. And it was saying that they just a stone throw away. So that when those people felt that they were going to come under threat, the people in Manga decided to give them refuge, and that now even made them even more vulnerable because Manga came under attack. I do not know if we have been able to do any will I say, research or study on how to handle this sort of peculiar situations where we have border communities? Does the Army have a policy, for instance, for how it treats issues along the border, um, especially when it involves border communities?
Yeah, actually, this is even beyond the army, beyond the military. I think it's a national issue when you talk about policies in respect of border communities. I have just mentioned the issue of Nigerian Border Communities Commission, or I can't say precisely the name, but I think that is it. So there are policies nationally. To what extent do we follow them? And to what extent those that are statutorily responsible for the well-being and administrating as well as the security of these border communities are doing is entirely a different matter. But I know for sure, the military are being proactive, and I know, take for instance, 23 Brigade has cited beyond the forward operation basis, some of the battalions under it, they are now being model battalions. So it is not just a name, but in terms of sophistication of equipment and what have you. So, but what remains is to further enhance that with good governance and further support to the border communities.
I put a lot of emphasis on Manga community because, theirs, it would seem, just came out of the blues. We've seen quite a few other attacks, and you've mentioned a few of them. Before now, we used to see, our border with Chad also come under some, attacks every now and again. But with Niger, in recent times, we've had a lot more fire from that end attacking the northwest of the country. We've seen how Sokoto, for instance, was also in the news last week. There was a very murderous attack on some communities in Sokoto State. Um, uh, Before now, there had been some quiet because even though Sokoto had come under attack a few times before that time, we had noticed a certain a lull in activities, so to speak. But it would seem that there is a resurgence. What did we do right, and how are we dropping the ball, in such a way that we're now losing lives once again?
Yeah, well, I know for sure that the issue about the fight against banditry and kidnapping, particularly in the Northwest, is equally complicated. However, I think the weapons or the investment in the weaponry by the federal government is gradually paying dividend because the capacity and capability of the Nigerian Air Force is enhanced, and the army has just taken also over some equipment that were, procured for them. So that account for the lull of the activities, and of course, the measures taken by some of the state governments, in terms of shutting down markets, shutting down telecommunication facilities, and so combination of that. Well, they are at it. The military made concerted effort to degrade the bandits and clearing some of their accounts. And in fact, the most significant was the, precise air attack on bandits camp by the Air Force last Friday. So by and large, some of these border communities are far-flung, and the military needs other equipment. And that is why somebody was even talking about, look, the newly procured APCs, bulk of it should go to the northwest as against going to the northeast. To what extent they are doing that is something else. But then, just like you mentioned, it is kind of complicated. There is also the menace of the issue of war economy, because there are people that are benefiting from these wanton destructions and killing and kidnapping of people simply because they are benefiting from it. Take, for instance, the informants, and take, for instance, people that supply them logistics and what have you. So they know for sure, because they have far better knowledge of the terrain and the environment. So they tend to, make sure that they inform them and they perpetrate such acts.
Okay. Well, let's quickly go to Lagos now. I understand my colleague Ayo has questions for you. Ayo.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. Well, General, the issue you mentioned about border communities is quite interesting to me. I mean, you've talked about the intervention of the military, what the army has been doing, the equipment that they have gotten. But we also understand from previous comments of, you know, retired generals, especially a former chief of army staff retired, who was saying, as far as he's concerned, only military hardware is not the only solution. We need to intervene in the social sector, social lives of the people, which underscores the issues that you raised concerning the development of the border communities. And there is, as you said, a Border Communities Development Agency. The chairman of that governing council, of the governing council of that agency, is the vice president and has the attorney general as a member as well. And part of the functions of that agency, which I'm pretty sure many people are hearing about for the first time today, is to ensure that the communities develop and not make them vulnerable as they are now, infrastructure development and all those things. So in the light of what you said about how far-flung these two communities are, Ilela in Sokoto, for instance, is very, very far from is a border community with Niger, and of course we've heard about Takum, which is a bordering community to Cameroon. I'm wondering, with what we have on our hands now, is there anything really that cannot be done to develop these agencies, these border communities, to at least get some partnership with them so that we are not as vulnerable as we are now?
Is it that cannot be done or that should be done?
Well, I asked that deliberately because, I mean, one would have expected that what to ask is what can be done. Is there anything that cannot be done? Is there anything impossible for us to do that's made us so vulnerable over time?
I quite understand what you are saying. Yeah, exactly. Believe me, sincerely speaking, no effort is too small. We really need to secure the border. And the unfortunate thing beyond all these things that are happening, it is also the issue of the porous border and neglect of the border community is also affecting the counter-insurgency and counter-terrorism efforts of the Nigerian military and security forces. Therefore, nothing should be spared to ensure the well-being of the border communities and ensure that they are properly, administered and secured. Beyond that, if you look at it, in fact, it's so sad and unfortunate that we neglected them. There is no single border community that you look at and be happy or proud that actually there is semblance of government presence as it is expected to be. Therefore, there is need for us to ensure that they are properly secured and properly administered, replete of infrastructures. But it is not just the border communities. It is also about all other communities in the Nigerian society. It may surprise you to know that there is a local government headquarters in Borno State. I don't know as of today, but I know within the last a year or two, there has never been a motorable road to that community. And meanwhile, it is just a stone throw to Niger Republic. So for goodness sake, how do we expect them to have a sense of belonging vis-a-vis the enticement being offered by these terrorists? So I think there is a need for a concerted effort to ensure that the well-being of these border communities are being taken care of and they are well secured.
Well, we hope that, that what we've just seen right now, because what we've seen also is that security agencies have now gone to Manga community. Apart from the assessment, it was seen that they have now had a station, situated in Manga community. We hope that it will not just be for the now. How do you think we can do this on a sustainable basis? Because the chances are high that today is Manga. We don't know which other community it will be, and we also know that our security agencies are a little overstretched. How do you think we can handle this, putting security agents in or maintaining some presence in border communities in a sustainable fashion?
Well, I think it is not just, I know for the past years the forward operation base were there, and it's just that they are being reinforced and enhanced. And I believe it's ongoing process, given the fact that these threats have clearly manifested themselves, and the Amazonians, beyond what you we have, there are also allegations that they have gone into a kind of understanding with indigenous people of Biafra. So this is something that has to be taken very, very seriously beyond the security forces. The government, particularly the federal government, has to look at it with the desired attention it deserves, so that beyond the military solution, there should be other constructive engagement, particularly with the Cameroonian government. Even though we have bilateral agreements under the auspices of multinational joint task force, possibly we should respond it further. But beyond that also, there should be diplomatic engagement. And I made mention of it earlier on, that the issue of these borders are also disturbing or rather affecting the fight against terrorism and insurgency, because just quite recently we noticed the influx of foreign fighters, and they come through in some of the neighboring countries. So therefore, the federal government really need to really talk to some of these countries. I know that in particular Cameroon is cooperating very well, but there is need for improved cooperations, and which will be spearheaded by...
Okay, well, we've spoken about that. Is it also possible for us to, you have said that they're just being reinforced, but we also know that a few more communities might not have this presence. Is it possible for us to be thinking of an audit or an assessment of our border communities and seeing, those ones that could be vulnerable, and seeing how we can reinforce our security presence, preempting any attack on those places?
Yeah. You are quite right. There should be such things. More so, if you look at it, the Cameroonian side, the issue, the communities, so far away, and the terrain is so mountainous, and communication services are very poor. So, but each of the border communities has its own peculiarities. Therefore, there is need to look at those peculiarities and see how best we can further, guarantee their safety and security.
Well, I think it's a fine place to leave it. We hope that that beyond what we've seen, that issues around border communities are taken a little more seriously, considering just what they could spell for security, national security in Nigeria, and of course Nigeria's territorial integrity. We have to thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Retired Brigadier General Sani Osmani is the former Director at Army Public Relations and also a former spokesperson of the Nigerian Army. He's also a consultant director at the Corporate Affairs and Information Nigerian Army Resource Center here in Abuja. Thank you for coming on Sunrise Elite this morning.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure.
Well, we'll take a break at this point. When we come back, we'll also have another perspective on this issue. Please stay with us.